Okay, welcome to the first session of the Adaptation Planning and Practices course, hosted by us at the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science and the USDA Climate Hub. Just a reminder again to turn off your speakers and mute your line, and we'll get this party started. Okay, so welcome. This is a training. Okay, I should say, now that we've got all the logistics out of the way, I'd like to welcome you to the online course. This is going to be an awesome time. We'll be together for the next 8 weeks, and you'll get to meet all of the wonderful faces that you see on the screen here today. But first, we'll kick it off with some introductions. So my name is Danielle Shannon, and I'm the Northern Forest Climate Hub Coordinator and staff at the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. I help land managers like yourself think about climate change and how it fits into the broader land management planning that they're doing, primarily with folks in the Midwest and in the Northeast. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Maria Genoviak. I am the Deputy Director at the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and I'm also the coordinator for our climate change response framework activities in New England and Northern New York. And so I will be here on a lot of the Monday lectures, as well as helping to co-lead the Wednesday group of folks mainly focused on the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and I'm thrilled you're here today.
Right, thanks, Maria. So we have a bunch of other folks, some of whom are in the room today. So, raise your hand if you're here. I know Maddie's here, and I think Anna Marie is as well. And Patricia, or Maddie and I will be co-hosting tomorrow's discussion session, and Maria and Patricia will be hosting the Wednesday session. Before we move on, I do want to acknowledge, do a land acknowledgement, and I'd like to acknowledge the ancestors of the lands that we gather on today. And virtually you're all in your own places, but I am located in Houghton, Michigan. And, I'd like to honor with gratitude the land itself and the Anishinaabe and Sioux people, past and present, who have lived with the land throughout the generations. The organization I work for, the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, we are recognizing and understanding that traditional and indigenous knowledges and perspectives are not often recognized in Western land management activities, but play an enormously essential role in helping all of us understand how, what was here before and how we can help to be part of what will come 7 generations down the road. So, we're partnering with regional tribal organizations in the Great Lakes and community members to face this topic and to provide a platform and an opportunity to learn more. And, you can follow up on this effort that we're part of, and you can choose to be part of it yourself if you'd like. So I'll put a chat, or Maria, maybe you can put into the chat a link to the tribal adaptation effort that we are part of. Okay, so next slide. So I keep saying that we're part of the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, but what is that? Well, Maria and I and others are part of a team of climate adaptation specialists and researchers at this organization. Maybe you've heard of us, also called NIACS. Our organization is led by the Forest Service and Michigan Tech. In many ways, it is funded by the Forest Service, the 3 branches of the Forest Service, the Northern Research Station, Eastern Region, Northeastern Area State and Private, as well as the USDA Climate Hubs. But our steering membership includes, a really broad perspective from Indigenous groups in industry, academic institutions. And, we all come together to address the scientific and management needs that we're facing in the fields of climate change and ecosystem management. So the purpose of the work that we do is to be that interstitial group, that bridge between science and management. And our goal really is to provide climate and carbon services and practical information that you can use in your day-to-day ecosystem management. So I mentioned the climate hubs. If you haven't heard of them before, there's a climate hub in every region. And we at NIACS actually lead a pretty big one. It's highlighted in blue here, called the Northern Forest Climate Hub. The hubs are a really cool idea. It's this unique collaboration between the Agricultural Research Service and the Forest Service. And the idea is to provide sector information on climate change, both in agriculture and in forestry and in ecosystem management to everyone across the United States. So, like I said, NIAX runs the Northern Forest Climate Hub, and our mission is to deliver science-based, region-specific information that can help natural resource managers and woodland owners integrate climate change into planning, decision-making, and management activities. We do provide that forest sector perspective for the Midwest and the Northeast Hub, who do primarily focus on agriculture. Okay, so that is a lot of welcome and introductions, but we're a complex group. So moving forward, we will dive into a few of the logistics regarding the course, so you can get a handle on some of that information that's included in the course syllabus. And then we'll jump into what is adaptation, what is the adaptation workbook, and finally end on explaining step 1. Okay, so I think many of us are here today because we're trying to wrestle with this idea of climate change and the many challenges that it will bring or has already brought to the lands that we care about. I think we can all agree that climate change introduces, a certain level of uncertainty about future conditions that really does challenge our expectations of how ecosystems function and, how we might be able to manage them into the next century. We know that ecosystems will change in response to rapid climate change in many ways, like habitat shifts for species and wildlife and changing ecosystem assemblages, all the way to affecting the fundamental ecosystem processes and how we interact with the land. Basically climate change is going to make it more difficult to do what we're trying to do out there. And, we know that's a problem. And we know this idea is kind of big and complex. And so a lot of us are sort of left with like, well, how do we deal with this? How do we, meet it head on? And that's really the purpose of this course is we're here to face these issues and to learn from each other as well. In this course, we'll guide you through a process to help you apply a climate change filter to your planning projects and be here for you to help not only teach you and coach you how to adapt and learn to and respond to climate change, but also to support you as you're trying to, fulfill and move towards those unique goals and to sustain those values that you have on the landscape. So, if you've read the course syllabus, maybe you feel a little bit overwhelmed and you feel like this is an awful lot to ask for a free course. But, taking the time to create an adaptation plan, it is an extra step, but it's super important and critical to ensuring that long-term effectiveness in our actions. I can say it's always been impossible to predict the future, and climate change really does make that uncertainty even more apparent. But by practicing adaptive management, we're learning how to adjust and manage in the face of uncertain future conditions. And this course and using the adaptation workbook will help us clearly and intentionally tell our story and connect the dots between what we're trying to do and the potential climate risks. Okay, so what did you sign up for? The course that you are enrolled in now is a course that's specially designed to help you professionals integrate climate change considerations into real-world natural resource planning projects. And through this course, you will learn how to identify local climate change impacts and scale them so that you can understand the risks that might pose to the place that you care about. Part of this process is coaching you through developing specific actions that can help to adapt your activities to changing conditions. And in the end, we hope that you'll walk away with your own climate-informed project plan. Part of this course is also a little module on communication to help to set that baseline and to support you as you're moving back out into the world, communicating your plan and the importance of thinking about climate change to your stakeholders on the topic. In the end, we'll always be here and we'll always have this great connection. So we hope that you'll also continue to lean on us in the future, and feel free to reach out to us. The course itself is an 8-week course with 1 week off as a vacation week in February. Our expectation is that you will participate as much as you can. Primarily, we want you to prioritize those discussion sessions, and we would love to have you at all the lectures, but we understand that life comes up, and so we've developed this format where we will record them and then post them to YouTube. Every lecture session occurs on Monday, and your discussion sessions are on Tuesday or on Wednesday. And if you've forgotten which session you're in, just let me know and I'll get you in the right place. We will something that we've started doing over the years, which has been a really fun thing, is that we provide a project check-in at least once during the course, and one of our instructors will reach out to you to ask you how it's going, to check in on your project, and just to be there as a personal connection. So when one of us does reach out to you, just be ready for that, and feel free to take advantage of that time, and maybe bounce ideas off of us, and just let us know where you're at. We really enjoy getting to know all of you through that activity. So in the last slide, you would see continuing education credits, and you're only going to get credits for those sessions that you attend. We're not going to be taking attendance throughout the course, but we're going to ask you to keep track of your own attendance at lecture and discussion in order to receive continuing education credits. This course was advertised with an eligibility of 9 SAF credits, but we recently got it upgraded to 22. So if that's not an incentive, I don't know what is. But if you do complete the course, if you do attend all of the lectures and discussions and complete your homework, then you will be eligible for 22 Category 1 continuing forestry education credits. And we will ensure that you get a certificate at the end of the course, and we'll make sure that you get everything you need in order to get those credits. Similarly, for the International Society of Arboriculture, you are eligible for 9 continuing education units. And if there are other organizations that you would like us to bring into the fold because you would like to get that credit as well, just let us know, and then we'll fill out the forms we need in order to get you the credits. Okay, so all of the course materials that you will find in your syllabus and the information I just covered is actually included in your adaptation workbook. So if you've created a profile, if you have dropped your pin and started your project, you will see on the left-hand side, it's actually a good check. If you have selected the course, when you've created your project, you'll see homework listed in this left-hand bar. And as part of all of this, you'll see all of the course agenda notes linked to the syllabus and just the reminders of all of that important information. If you do not see homework listed on the left, that means you're not enrolled in our class. So let me know and we'll figure out how to get you in. You might actually be enrolled in the class but didn't select the course when you were starting your project. So don't worry about it. Just be in touch with me and we'll figure it out. Okay, and lastly, this is a self-led independent course. It means, you're in charge of prioritizing and protecting your time to get the work done. So, we're asking you to stay as engaged as you can, turn off distractions, try to close down your email, follow up on the newsletters when we send them. All of this is meant to help stay focused and to remind you of the work that is ahead each week. Like I pointed out in the last slide, we're going to have homework, but don't be scared. It's just a little tiny bit. The homework is fun, and the primary assignment is just to help move you through the adaptation planning process. So you're really just, the homework is doing your work, and we're trying to make sure that you are staying attentive and getting that work done each week. We will review your homework before every discussion session, so we will know who's completed it and who hasn't. So we're asking everyone to complete your homework by Monday. before the next course lecture, and this will just give us ample time to review all those responses and answer any questions that come up as well. Oh, and check the course syllabus if you have any questions related to your assignment. And finally, one of the great advantages of this course is to get to know everyone who is also here. We've split up the discussion sessions so that they are regional. There's mostly a Northeast contingency that's meeting on Wednesday, and mostly a Michigan, really, mostly Michigan and a few other folks who are meeting on Tuesday. So, you know, feel free to reach out to each other to collaborate and share ideas, and always, you know, reach out to us as well, and we're happy to help provide as many additional resources as you need throughout the course. Okay, so with that, I haven't been checking the chat, but hopefully Maria is helping to answer any questions in the chat. Let's move into what is climate adaptation. Okay. So we talked about how the climate is changing, how we're all aware of that level of uncertainty. But in this course, we're here to talk about action. How do we respond to those climate change issues that are presenting themselves now and will so long into the future? Well, that's through this idea of adaptation. And adaptation is defined as the adjustment of systems in preparation or in response to climate change. And really what we're doing in this course is thinking about adaptation actions that will be designed to intentionally address climate change impacts and vulnerabilities in order to meet our goals, objectives, and values on the land. It's important to note that adaptation activities will always build upon sustainable ecosystem management and conservation ideas and techniques in most cases. You know, most of what we're probably already doing probably already makes good sense as a response to climate change. So don't be afraid to take credit for the good work that you're already doing. You know, in the end though, you know, there is really no single solution. There's no one size fits all answer to integrating climate change into our natural resource work. It really does depend on you and the goals and values that you have. You know, every decision is unique and will vary upon, you know, who you are, the place that you're working in, the long-term vision that you have for the land, and the practical equipment and procedures and methods that you're obliged to follow. So, you know, really what we're here to do is we're here to go through this process, but there's an understanding that we're all going to do things a little bit differently, and that's okay. So what is the Adaptation Workbook? Well, the Adaptation Workbook is what we'll be using in the course. And the Adaptation Workbook is actually one of a series of adaptation resources that we've created at NIAX to help land managers like yourself integrate climate considerations into their management decisions. The Adaptation Workbook is a framework that's actually an adaptive management process. And it was created as a structured decision support tool in the form of a workbook and related adaptation resources that you'll learn about in a little bit. The workbook was designed to be flexible enough to accommodate diverse goals and land ownerships, and really does center on you and your expertise and judgment. The intention of these tools are to help all of you clarify and articulate how you're intentionally considering climate adaptation in your management plans. As a rule, all of us at NIAX and the workbook itself will not make any recommendations to you, but instead the tool that you're using is it's designed to be a platform so that you can take credit for the good work that's already being done, and really creates an opportunity for everyone to recognize new approaches to dealing with climate-related threats and vulnerabilities. The workbook is structured, but it's flexible. It's designed for all sorts of folks from a variety of perspectives. And the central idea is really just to break down the planning process into bite-sized chunks. And that will allow us to take time and have some space to move through defining, you know, what our management goals are, where we're located. It gives us time to assess what the climate change impacts that are most relevant to the project location are. Then we can evaluate what those impacts might mean for achieving our goals and sustaining our values in the land. And then we use additional adaptation resources to help us identify and support the actions that we'll take to minimize climate change risks. And lastly, before it's all over, even though nobody loves this step, but it's really important, we'll have you actually describe how you will monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of your actions in meeting your management goals. So in short, the workbook helps folks account for their risks and ask them to connect their dots to climate change vulnerability, right? Like that's the purpose of this, what are the climate change, what are you trying to do? What are the climate change risks and how are you going to respond? But really, most importantly also is, hey, this is a great opportunity to document and critique, the process, your planning process, all of the ideas that you have. By writing this down, you're really creating a strong record and you're creating a unique story about how climate change risks might affect what you're doing and provides a good idea of how you're planning to respond to it. So one cool thing is that you are not alone. Many other people have come before you to think about climate change and have used the Adaptation Workbook. We have over 425 projects across the Midwest, Northeast, and actually beyond our regional borders, where folks have used the Adaptation Workbook in in-person or online trainings. And some of these stories are online on the web. So you can go to forestadaptation.org/demos and you can learn about their stories, learn about where they are, what's important to them, what are those climate change risks that were, the greatest concern to them, and how do they plan to respond to them. It's a huge gateway of, I think, like 150 to 200 stories that are online. And it just provides a really great opportunity to feel like a community because, we're all learning about this together and we're all trying to figure out what adaptation looks like on the ground. So feel free to go over there, check those out, and that might help you conceptualize, what adaptation looks like in a variety of circumstances and landforms and different perspectives. This is what the web page looks like. Be sure just to click on the map to find the story. Okay, and that's all I've got right now. While we do a little screen share, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat and I'll hand it over to Maria.
Yeah, let me queue mine up. I think we had one or two questions just about people were, making sure that their emails were associated with the course. So if you're not sure and you're not seeing that option to add a project for the winter course, let Danielle and I know and we can troubleshoot you through that. I think that's the main one. Let me bring up the slides here then.
Yeah, and just to answer that just for 1 second, if you are part of a group, it will be the easiest if you elect one person to create the account for your project and then maybe share those login credentials with the rest of your team. But I'll be in contact with the folks in the chat. Thanks.
All right. And so what I wanted to do, we got a little bit more material today just because it's the first day. So don't be shy in asking questions or chatting things in. We know there are a lot of different moving parts and we'll have some additional time at the end of the session today to be able to continue to help through there. Just think we'll see what time it is. All right. So I'm going to talk about kind of setting up your project, refining your project idea that you submitted as part of the registration of the course, and then how do you complete step 1, which is the first part of week 1, the homework that we're doing. So the step 1 of the adaptation workbook is the same as any other planning process, and we're really just setting up our projects. And so we want to define the location, your project, your timeframes, your management goals and objectives. And so we're really starting to just really line everything up and then really start diving into the climate change components of that adaptation workbook in the upcoming meetings. So really here what we're asking is 2 questions. Where are you working? And what are your goals and objectives for the area? And so of course, everything else is going to tier to this so we can think about how climate change is going to affect your project area and your goals and objectives and how you can adjust your management to cope with change. And so the first thing you'll do is you'll define your project. And this is something that, many of you already submitted a step 1 as part of registration for the course. We really encourage people to do that because we want to make sure people know this is a project-based course. We want you to be able to get something out of this and create an adaptation plan. And so we really try and get you guys to, pick up something that's on your desk or on your mind and be able to work through them. And so, really just try and think about what you have, and you probably, like I said, already submitted some of this during the registration process, and so you can kind of pick up that form that you use then for that step 1 worksheet and then refine it and get it into the adaptation workbook. If you ever have any questions, we want to make sure that you're getting a lot of what you need from the beginning of the course. And so again, feel free to reach out to Danielle and me. And of course, the sessions that we have on Tuesday and Wednesday, the discussion sessions, we're going to be refining these ideas. So don't feel like you have to figure it out today. We can workshop them a bit during the discussion sessions this week. That's what they're there for. And so in terms of the adaptation workbook itself is a planning process, and depending on how you use it, you can use it, on a, teeny tiny lot or tiny area all the way up onto, really large projects. We use it for National Forest integrated resource management projects that cover tens of thousands of areas. We modify the adaptation workbook to use it for national forest planning, so there's really any sort of size you can use the adaptation workbook for. But in terms of this particular class, we want to make sure that you have something that's going to fit into the time that we have available so that you can go all the way through the adaptation workbook and have a really good solid plan and not get overwhelmed. And so what we found is that with this course format, something that's on the scale of tens or maybe a few hundred acres seems to work best. And so, I work in rural forests a lot, and so thinking about a wood lot or a timber sale stand is sort of like the level I kind of think about things at. If you're working in an urban area, it could be a park or it could be a neighborhood and the street trees associated with that. But really the idea is we want something that's going to be fairly bite-sized in terms of not being so big that you get bogged down in completing the workbook. If you have a big project like that, I know that there are at least 1 or 2 groups here from national forests. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you to scale it down to kind of take one chunk of that particular project and use it for this particular training. And then you'll be able to go back and use the workbook, completely for something larger. So another way is, some of you, those of you who are visual thinkers or maybe, just need some enticement to listen by thinking about food is, we're going for projects that have, some complexity, 2 or 3 different ecosystems or topics. We'll talk about what those what that means, a couple of goals and objectives and some tangible time frames. Really good. We don't want you to go too much in terms of something that's insanely complex. You'll feel overstuffed. You'll be overwhelmed. You won't know what to do. And it's okay if you want to take the smaller bite at this point and, just kind of test the waters, and then you can have, a simpler, straightforward project. So just getting a sense of what this means. And I'll talk about goals and objectives in just a few slides. And again, we'll have time to workshop these ideas Tuesday and Wednesday during the session. All right. Okay, so when you create a project, again, I just wanted to, another piece just as you start, so I know that there's been some chat in there. So first thing, go to your syllabus. At the back of the syllabus, there's how to create a project for the course. You're going to create an adaptation workbook account or share an account with a buddy. You're going to, click add, add a project for the winter course. And then when you do that, you're going to end up with this first dialogue, where you're going to enter the project information. And again, step 1 is all about defining where you're working. So you're going to drop a pin, you're going to name your project, you might describe it. You can put in acres or size, which could be like numbers of trees or something if you have a different kind of way of describing your property or project area. The piece I wanted to point out here before we forget is that at the beginning, you'll also pick a project type. And I wouldn't worry in some ways because there's a lot of different ones here. But I would say generally, if you're working in a rural forest, taking the forest project type, forested watershed if you have a strong water focus. There's an urban type, and then there are some new ones that we've added more recently, including forest carbon management, recreation, and non-forested wetlands. I think most of the people here are working in forests or urban forests, and those tend to be built out more in terms of the adaptation workbook. So I would generally recommend just when you see that radio button, select those, unless you have a more topical focus on one of these other areas. So I just wanted to mention that ahead of the time because it was something that might get lost in the shuffle. So you're going to go into the workbook, you're going to define your project area. Then you're going to dive down into the details of setting up your workbook. And so there's two parts. The first one is you're going to define your management topics. Management topics just means kind of it's management topics or units. And so it's really just thinking about the primary ways to divide up your project area. And so this can be by geographical units, so stands or cover types, or here in this picture we have a riparian forest. That's an area that might be described by geography. Or you can describe things thematically. So sometimes, often if we're thinking about a management project, we might have invasive species as a theme that we would be dealing with across a project area or a larger area. It's something we deal with more thematically. And rather than having to deal with invasives in each stand, if you're going to be kind of been dealing with invasive species, for example, invasive plant species kind of globally, you would incorporate them as a management topic. So some examples of management topics, are things like forest types or ecosystem types, land uses, or these management issues such as invasive species or areas affected by emerald ash borer. You might have different things like that. And so you can split up your project area into a couple of these major themes. You don't want to, in the lumping versus splitting camp, we don't want to have too many splits because it increases the complexity of your project. But definitely recognizing, if you might have a couple cover types or other ways of divvying up your divvying up your project area, you might do it at this point. All right. When you log into the workbook, when you select that radio button, depending on the project type that you pick, as well as your location, the adaptation workbook may load some management topics for you automatically. This is especially going to happen if you're working in forests and you're in one of the areas where we've developed vulnerability assessments. It will preload forest types from the vulnerability assessments that we've generated because there's climate change information associated with those. Or if you're in an urban area, it might give you some generated land cover types based on things out of iTree and other tools. So you can choose to use these predefined cover types, ecosystem types, or land cover types, or you can create custom management topics. And again, these are things that might be unique to your property, like a focus on wood turtle habitat or something like that. When you're in the workbook, and there are in the materials, we do have tutorials that walk you through. In the workbook, there are little tutorials that walk you through, and we do have slide deck, like kind of recorded presentations to walk you step by step through the workbook if you need it. We just wanted to give you a few highlights because sometimes people find it tedious to get the step-by-step play. So you'll see that there are these preloaded forest types or ecosystem types might already come in. And you can either click on the plus if those are there to have them added to your project or property or project area, or you can add a custom type. Then when you add a custom type, it'll pop up and you can just name it, describe it if you'd like, and then save. And so again, if I was going to be doing something, I might say invasive plant species, and I'd be like, this is me wanting to control invasive plant species across the property because I'm most concerned about buckthorn and honeysuckle. So that's how you would kind of set up your project. Again, a lot of you who completed step 1, you already had this as part of it. And so it's just a matter of putting it into the online workbook now that you've pinned down your project. And then, yeah, so after you hit anything that you add or create to your list, it will show up on the right-hand side of the panel. Then the second part of step 1 is to define your management goals and objectives. And again, this was something we had you do at the beginning of the session, at the beginning of registration with the step 1 worksheet, just to get situated. So management goals are broad general statements that express the direction you're heading. You know, it's really kind of the general picture in mind of what your project area might look like in the future. And you need to have at least one goal for each management topic in the workbook. Management objectives are more specific than management goals, and so they really start to talk about kind of the details of the results that you want to achieve that desired outcome. And so for each topic, you're going to have at least one management objective. For each goal, you can have multiple objectives for each goal. Generally, again, with that idea of a project that's not too big, having, you know, 3 objectives total, up to 3 objectives total up to about 12 is a nice size. If you start to get more than that, you know, that's when we start to like flag projects and look more closely and kind of warn you that it might be a little bit harder to achieve. Objectives should be SMART, so this is the idea of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So kind of getting them, I think really just trying to, get a good idea of the direction that you're going to head. You know, these are really important for kind of communicating where you're going. So just to provide an example, let's say that I describe this in terms of the Goldilocks zone of these goals and objectives. So let's say your goal is to enhance habitat conditions in a northern hardwood forest. I have a degraded forest. I want to improve the conditions for wildlife and other wildlife species, other reasons. And so an example of a management objective would be, you know, something like increasing structural diversity through a series of harvests that promote regeneration. So this tells me something I want, you know, structural diversity. It tells me kind of part of the outcome I'm expecting to see, regeneration, but it's not getting so specific that it's actually saying, I'm going to do, you know, this silvicultural practice, because we're not necessarily sure. We want to be able to talk about where we're going, but not necessarily how we're going to get there, because we'll get to that part later in the workbook. So we're trying to find this area of not too vague, not too specific. Another one is if we're working in an urban system, we might have a management goal related to increasing urban tree canopy. And an example of an objective would be to increase urban street cover to 30% of developed areas. So we get an idea of where we're going. You know, we're putting a bit of that, you know, measurable part on it of, you know, maybe we're at 20% street tree cover and we want to get to 30%. So we get that directionality, we get a sense of the impact, where we're going, but we're not getting so mired down in the details of exactly what species we're going to use or techniques at this stage. So I hope this helps. You guys will have access to these slides and you can, again, kind of think through, you know, maybe what you provided at the beginning of the registration process was kind of a quick and dirty version, and now you can kind of go through and refine them a little bit more. The reason we really like to emphasize this up front is it helps by setting up your workbook and being really clear at where you're going in the beginning, is it really helps, you know, simplify and streamline thinking about climate change in later steps. All right. So just a couple things to keep in mind as we wrap up. If possible, use goals and objectives that you already have. So this isn't meant to be just like a painful exercise and, doing worksheets and, giving you homework. Again, we really want you to be using projects that you're doing for work and being able to count this training as part of your work. And so thinking about, is this already in a management plan or some other document that's already there? Maybe it's in your head and you just haven't written it down, but you probably already have these in some form. They don't need to be related to climate change. So don't try and come up with goals and objectives that say, I want my forest to be resilient to climate change. We're going to be thinking about climate change in every other step. So you don't have to think about climate change in this one. You just think about, I want clean water, or I want wildlife habitat. Just think about those attributes and amenities you want otherwise. And you don't have to think specifically about climate change. I will say if you want carbon benefits, this is a good time to identify that you maybe want carbon sequestration benefits. Those are good goals and objectives. They can be area-wide, or they can be specific to a particular topic or land use, so that will depend on your project. And look into the future 10 to 20 years or beyond. And this is something I look at with people in their workbooks, is if your goal or objective can be achieved in 5 years, it's not really an objective. It just usually tends to, at that point, just be a prescription. It's not that, if you're saying, I want to treat all the invasives in 2 years and then monitor, there's not a lot for us to reconsider there. So really, we want you to kind of be expanding your time horizon to think about climate change, think about the directionality of where you want to head. So I know it's week one, we throw a lot at you, this first one. So, you can chat in if you're still awake. Hopefully we'll see maybe a few people who are still hanging with us. We got just a few more slides. Again, this is your homework for Monday. We'll go through more details during this session on Tuesday and Wednesday. So we'll fiddle with these and help you pin these down. So your assignment for next time is to read the course syllabus if you haven't already. And again, remember that's how to sign up for the sign up for the adaptation workbook and get your project started is in there as well. So you're going to create your project. You're going to complete step 1 of the adaptation workbook. There's that homework section that Danielle pointed to. It's on the next slide too. You're going to complete that homework section. And then if you have any time and are motivated because it's the beginning of a new course, you can start thinking about the next step, which is really all about climate impacts, and start kind of reading up on climate change impacts for your particular area. So again, in terms of the workbook, what it looks like on the inside once you're in, there are video tutorials for each step. And so you're going to be able to go to each step, and it's going to just walk you quickly through kind of the high points of what to do in each step. So you don't have to, you can do that on your own time whenever you need it. And then we do provide a adaptation workbook cookbook tutorial. It's basically all the screenshots. And so and we have some time points in there if you want to watch a recording, but the idea is, just basically, you can use that as needed and have it kind of with you when you're going through the workbook as a reference. All right. We have bi-weekly discussion sessions, so Tuesday and Wednesday this week at 11. At 11 a.m. we're going to have discussion sessions, so you should have gotten your assignment. Let us know if you didn't. So this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll have discussion sessions. We'll talk about step 1. Then you'll have all week to complete step 1. And then next Monday, February 1st, is when your step 1 homework will be. And then next week, February 1st, on Monday, we'll have lecture 2. So that's kind of how the weeks flow. Next week, the week of February 1st, we don't have a lecture. We have a lecture, we don't have a discussion, but we are having a special session on the Climate Change Tree Atlas, because sometimes we've tried to kind of cover that, and some people have thought, oh, it's too much, and some people have wanted more of the atlas, and so we just made it its own thing. And so we're going to have a special session that's also in your course syllabus. Everything uses the same Zoom room, so if in doubt, just show up here. We'll be here. live here for the next, Danielle and I live in this room for the next 8 weeks. So we're standing by. Let's see here. Yep, so this is, okay, and this is the last slide. So it's recapping everything I just said. So I'm gonna stop, see if Danielle has anything I wanna add, anything she wants to add, and then we will continue to be on for any additional Q&A that you guys have.
Yeah, so thanks, Maria. That was great. All right, so a few things came up in the chat that I just want to bring up right now. Number one, the email that you registered for this course is the email that I have associated to the Adaptation Workbook. And so if you've decided to use a different email, then just shoot me an email and let me know what that new account name is, and then I'll get it connected. Second, if you've already created an account and you were like, oh no, I wasn't in the course, or maybe you're a longtime user and you've got many projects and you want to pick up on an old project for the course, email me, and then as long as I know the name of the project, I can try to associate it to the course. It's not super easy, so if you haven't created a project, just create a new one and select the course. I will be troubleshooting with a few people who are have contacted me directly. Also, if you are new to the course, we had a bunch of people sort of sign up last minute, which is awesome. And you haven't gotten a discussion assignment, just remind me and send me a note, and I'll make sure to get you in the right place. We will follow up with an email, with a newsletter tonight or tomorrow that will include the YouTube video and all the links to the tutorials that we talked about today. So in the meantime, look in your course syllabus. All right, those are all the updates that I've got. Thanks to everyone who hung out with us today.
Yeah, and we know that this week is a lot, so our next lectures do generally go much shorter than this one. It's just this one ends up having a lot to go through. So thanks for staying with us. We will see you in the discussions Tuesday and Wednesday, and then again, just email us if you have any questions in the meantime. Thanks for your time today. We'll stick on, but have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in discussion.
Woohoo! Bye, everyone.